Junk Food Dinner 346. Happy New Year! This week we're talking about those rude titties. First, a mermaid gives everyone a BJ in the Jaws spoof gums. Then, scientists study a lusty lady in Nightdreams. Finally, two guys get more than they bargained for at a zombie brothel in Night of the Living Babes.
I hate this macho big dick cowboy bullshit.
Welcome back to Junk Food Dinner, and Happy New Year, everyone. The second nominee for our JFD video store this week is Nightdreams from 1981. This is directed by FX Pope. Real name, I think, is Francis Delia. Delia, maybe. This is a movie that I never saw as a kid. Unfortunately, when I was negative 1 years old in 81 when this came out, I was not yet into the weird horror porno scene. But I did catch up with this at Cinefamily a few years ago. Actually, Joe Rubin's print of it played there. They also played a print of Cafe Flesh from UCLA, and it was really cool to see these two flicks from Steven Sayadian and Jerry Stahl at Cinefamily. And seeing them with a crowd was definitely one of the more memorable film-going experiences of my life. And, you know, both of these movies, I think, are kind of, you know, of the same, cut of the same cloth. Cafe Flesh came out a few years after Nightdreams, and there's a lot of the same cast and crew involved in both. This one is a little bit more, a little bit rougher around the edges. It's definitely more of a vignette series, although Cafe Flesh has that kind of general construction as well. But I just thought it was a really bizarre and really interesting movie, especially given the time period, 1981, something that I hadn't really seen before. Sayadian, who also goes by the name Rinse Dream, and he produced and art directed this movie, did a slideshow showcase before we watched the movie, and he showed a lot of the work that he had been doing for Hustler magazine leading up to the release of Nightdreams. And all that work is actually very much in the style of this movie. So if you end up seeing Nightdreams and you enjoy it, I would say look up online those photo spreads that Sayadian did for Hustler magazine, because they're very creative. You know, things like the breakfast sex scene in this movie are represented in his work for Hustler. And he did all this cool stuff with Bob's Big Boy characters and just weird stuff that you would never expect to see in a porno. Actually kind of briefly sparked a desire in me to hunt down old copies of Hustler magazine on eBay, something that I haven't yet capitalized on, but maybe someday I will. As for the plot of this movie, it's basically, like I said, it's a series of vignettes. It opens with this ominous black and white credits opening set to this monotonous heartbeat sound. And you get a feeling right away that this is not going to be a boner fest, that this is going to be kind of a weird, creepy horror movie more than it is a porno. And, we get introduced to the main character. It's this woman in an insane asylum, it looks like. She's being observed by these two doctors, one of them played by Andy Nichols from Cafe Flesh. And she's giving this kind of speech about her. It's a psychological self-evaluation where she's talking about her sexual empowerment and things like this. And it's almost like a one-woman show where she just happens to be nude and masturbating for the camera. So we get this, this masturbation scene, and then they cut into what the series of vignettes will be. And I guess the idea is that these psychiatrists that are overviewing this woman can kind of insert via this electrical device into her brain these erotic dreams. And so those are where the titular Nightdreams come from. So the first night dream that we see go on inside this woman's brain is a weird one. I mean, they're all pretty weird, but the first one is this Jack in the Box coming to life. It's like this nightmare-inducing scene where this woman is having sex with a jack-in-the-box that has come to life in this child's bedroom. Very surreal and bizarre. There's a part of it where they're doing like a 69 and the jack-in-the-box sticks its very long, weird-looking nose up her vagina, which is not erotic, but certainly interesting. Maybe even more interesting than the content of the scene is the fact that the Jack-in-the-Box and the whole set was lifted from the poster of Tobe Hooper's movie The Funhouse. At this point in time, Rinse Dream had a career in photography and was shooting a lot of low budget and medium and I guess higher budget horror movie posters. And one of the posters that he shot was for Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. So if you've ever seen that poster and thought, I want to see that Jack-in-the-Box have sex with a woman, this is your movie. But it's maybe not all that it's cracked up to be. I mean, it is a sex scene, but it kind of makes sex look scary, like in the way that like an H.R. Giger painting does. It's not the most erotic sex scene, but it is one of those rare sex scenes with multiple jump scares. Which is something. Like, it does all these quick cuts to like a scary clown face and stuff, and it's got all this weird lighting, and it's very, very bizarre. But it's cool because you're watching a scene like this, and you feel like, who the hell is making this? Like, is this some frustrated artist who is like legitimately talented and wants to create stuff and has just kind of ended up in porno, but is way too skilled to actually be working in this medium? So. And it's, it's fun on that level. It almost feels kind of like a fuck you to porno where he's like, I'm better than this shit. Like, look at these cool, surreal scenes I can make that, yeah, they technically have hardcore sex, so I can sell this, on the VCA, home video label, but I'm going to do my own thing. So, I like it in that sense. It's kind of like almost like what a 60s pop artist might have done with painting, he's doing here with porno. Because he's just going all out. Like in this ridiculous scene with the Jack-in-the-Box, you have super cool like noir style shadows being cast on people. Like there's like a light going through some Venetian blinds or something for no reason at all. Like even in like a straight up regular porno that's trying to be sexy, there's no reason for it to look this good. And then throw on top of it that it's, I think, actively trying to be disgusting at parts. I find it to be kind of interesting. So, after this initial Jack-in-the-Box scene, we cut back to the framing device. We see the girl and the doctor. And then we go into the next Night Dream, which is a relatively straightforward triple lesbian cowgirl scene. One of those that I think we've all seen in our days, maybe late at night on Cinemax. But it's got like a cool nighttime desert background. There's like a cool fire that's lit in the foreground and kind of looks like a David Lynch movie or something. And interestingly enough, it also features the Wall of Voodoo cover version of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire under the scene, and it's like the full song. And I think that they just lifted it with no permission from the band, so it's kind of weird to hear I remember that song being on the radio and stuff in the 80s, so didn't expect to hear that in this. Then it just cuts through another sequence of these night dreams. You get one where there's a woman in a hookah bar pleasuring herself with the end of a hookah before she gets gangbanged by the other patrons in the bar. Then we have another movie poster that comes to life in the form of the Dressed to Kill poster, the Brian De Palma poster that Rinse Dream created. We see that image from that poster of the model sitting on the edge of a bathtub, but it comes to life. She stands up, the camera follows her. We see the rest of that bathroom. And then some dude comes in and rapes her over a toilet in a scene that is like, even in such a weird and, deliberately shocking movie, like that felt like a little bit, maybe, I don't know if it's too transgressive, but a little bit too mean spirited. So that's a little bit weird, but it's
what makes it really weird is that like, if you watch a pornography film now, like that's just the average mainstream pornography. Like that's just how it works now.
Yeah, that's where James Dean's career came from, is this one scene.
Yeah, getting raped over a toilet is just vanilla porn now.
Yeah, that's foreplay in 2016. But yeah, so that part is weird, but they do wash off the kind of the gross feeling from that rape scene with maybe the coolest scene in porno history, I would like to say. It's a scene in which a woman sucks off a guy who's inside of a giant box of cream of wheat, while a piece of toast energetically dances around them. And, it's shot in a very nicely appointed kitchen, great looking scene, and probably the best execution of a cream of wheat sex scene that I can remember. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how I first heard about this movie, is seeing that clip on the internet in the early days of the internet, just without context, that, just coming across it and being like, what the fuck is this? What is it from, and how do I see this?
It's bizarre. And after that, they wrap things up with a love scene in hell, and then I think one up in heaven. There's a funny little twist ending, kind of, to the end of it, but I don't think you're really coming to this movie for the plot. Probably the reason that I like this the most is that besides the fact that each individual segment I think is fun and surreal, I feel like the genesis of kind of all the cool pornos that we like and we've talked about here on the show. Things like Dr. Caligari and Cafe Flesh and Devil and Miss Jones, just would probably never have happened without Nightdreams. A lot of the creative talent involved in those films got their start here. And, more than that, it's just the style of this movie was so unique at the time. We had seen porno parodies in the 70s, and certainly we've seen dark, harrowing dramas and stuff like that had, a porno bent in the 70s. But nothing that was like this, like deliberately surreal and horror movie based. And, like the new wave element to this, I think is really fun. So for me, like the fact that this kicks off probably that last great wave of porno films, I think is very notable. It's also the first screen appearance of Michelle Bauer, who I think was operating under the name Pia Snow at the time. Although it's tough to tell. There was another movie that came out in 1981 as well called Bad Girls, and I don't have a month of release for these movies, so maybe Bad Girls came out first. But Nightdreams or Bad Girls. I guess Bad Girls is maybe more notable in that Michelle Bauer gives a rare blowjob performance in that film, so be on the lookout for that, I guess. But yeah, I think this movie looks great. I mean, especially for the budget. It was filmed, basically for no money by a ragtag crew of guys just kind of desperate to make something. They did film this in the same tiny studio above the intersection of Hollywood and Cherokee, out there in Hollywood. It was the same studio that he used for his Hustler magazine shoots. And it's cool. I mean, it just has this homemade do-it-yourself type vibe to it. It kind of looks a little bit crummy on videotape. I think this movie is overdue for restoration, and hopefully somebody like Vinegar Syndrome will pick this up for eventual re-release. But yeah, I think this is a really fun and interesting watch. It's definitely a 100% no boners porno flick with like no boners underlined twice and in all caps. Because there's nothing sexy about this movie. But as like a demo reel for like an amazing surrealist photographer, I think it's fucking awesome.
I've never seen the Nightdreams, but I've always kind of wanted to because I really like Jerry Stahl. He's one of my favorite writers. He wrote the book Permanent Midnight, which is a very good book and also a pretty good movie, and a few other books that are really good. He also worked with this Sayadian fellow on Dr. Caligari, which we talked about a million years ago, which is a very good movie. So I've been wanting to see this. And like you guys, I saw that cream of wheat thing on like E-Bombs World or Style Project or something a long time ago.
Yeah.
And knew I had to see it. One thing that I like about this movie immediately is that Andy Nichols is in it. He's one of the scientist dudes, and I love him. He's also in Night of the Living Babes, and he's in Search of the Perfect 10, which we talked about a while back, and Devil and Miss Jones, and a couple of other like cults movies that aren't porn related in any way other than like I think porn directors did them. They're just like not any sex. But I always wondered why that guy didn't have a much bigger career, because I think he's really funny and charismatic in everything he does, and he's not like a porn dude. Like he never does any sex in these movies. Like he just shows up in these weird culty porn films and acts. So I don't know. Maybe he was like a theater dude or something and was never too worried about movies outside of the ones he did, but who knows? I like that guy though. There's one point where a dude's wiener is a baby, and that's like some shit where like Freud would probably be like, yo, this is my favorite movie. I'm Freud. I'm Sigmund Freud. That's my impression of him.
But it was a creepy ass baby. I mean, that's not just your regular Cabbage Patch Kid coming out of that pair of jeans.
Well, that's true. That's why Freud liked it so much. He likes them when they're creepy, I guess. But yeah, it's like a real weird scene. There's a lot of real weird stuff in this. I was like kind of surprised that this is like very not as weird as I thought. Like the setup's not really, I mean, I guess the setup's sort of weird, but it doesn't really look too crazy and weird. Like it's just like these scientists monitoring this lady. And the first few sex scenes, like the first half of the sex scenes are like pretty just like normal porny sex scenes, I thought. And then it starts to get kind of weird. So I kind of figured it would be much weirder going in. Also the hell scene, like there's this part where like these people have like this sex and like there's all these like tortured souls strapped to the walls, like being forced to watch them. And there's a scene like that in Devil and Miss Jones 3. And I think also like probably Devil and Miss Jones 1 and 2, probably perhaps. Although 3 is the one I love, so I watch it all the time. So it kind of reminded me of that. It's probably also from like the Divine Comedy or some shit, but so I don't know. I like that part. Yeah, this is fun. I don't know. It's not as good as Cafe Flesh or some of the other stuff this guy did that I've seen in terms of like being like a fun cult movie, but outside of the Cream of Wheat thing, the Cream of Wheat thing's genius, but everything else is like, I mean, yeah, it's all right. It's cool, I suppose, but I was expecting more from it.
Yeah, I have also never seen this. I've been wanting to see it ever since we did things like Dr. Caligari and Cafe Flesh on the podcast. I knew this was also in that realm with the Stephen Sayadian connection and Jerry Stahl connection and all that. And yeah, I had seen the Cream of Wheat scene online. And yeah, I think this is a lot like those movies where it feels more in the realm of midnight movie than porno movie. Like I feel like this has a lot more in common with things like Eraserhead and stuff than it does with, you know, just the regular porno that was coming out at this time, for sure. And it definitely feels like this is made by people, like you said, that had, you know, maybe wanted to do more arty things, but were kind of using porno as a way to just do things, get a budget to do some of the weird things they wanted to do. But yeah, I think this is cool. There's not a lot of stuff like this that was made. It was a very, you know, niche thing for a brief period of time. You know, we talked about the Devil and Miss Jones movies and the New Wave Hookers and a few things like that, where there was this weird period in the early 80s where they could do this kind of avant-garde arty porno, and that probably will never happen again. And certainly not in this capacity. It does, like you mentioned, Sean, feel very much like early 80s MTV, which is not coincidental, specifically because like that Francis Delia guy did a lot of early MTV music videos that are kind of in a similar vein. Like he did the Rockwell Somebody's Watching Me video, which kind of has a weird vibe like this. He did Wall of Voodoo Mexican Radio, so I think he probably had permission to use that Wall of Voodoo song since he was shooting their video a year later. But then he did shit like Weird Al's I Lost on Jeopardy, Starships We Built This City, and the Ramones Psychotherapy video. So yeah, there's he definitely had a pedigree in music videos after this, which were, you saw a lot of on the early days of MTV. And yeah, this, I don't know. I mean, it's like you said, it would be a hard one to get excited about, if you're looking to, rub one out. But if you're looking just for a weird, arty, kind of midnight movie kind of feel, like I think this would actually play well with like a midnight movie crowd, or like during a movie marathon or something. I mean, I guess it'd be a hard sell because there's a certain just percentage of people that I'm sure just don't want to watch a porno in a theater with a bunch of other people. But maybe like some of the weirder bits, spliced into like a video mixtape or something might play well. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's enough weird set pieces and enough cool art direction in this to make it a cool again, time capsule and historical curiosity, if nothing else. But yeah, just from a visual standpoint, it's certainly interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where if one of the segments is kind of boring you, they're all pretty short, and it moves on to the next one pretty quickly. So even though they're simple setups, it's always fresh because you're always looking at something new. Yeah, so that probably about wraps it up for Nightdreams. Maybe if you kids out there have your own bad movie podcast, cult movie podcast, maybe pick this during a horror anthology week or something. That might be a fun way to Fredo a horror anthology pick.
Yeah.
But we'll probably be taking a quick break here and then coming back to talk about Night of the Living Babes. So stick around.
Thanks for visiting the JFD video store. We hope you enjoyed our burning hot takes on this week's selected movie. Check us out on iTunes or junkfooddinner.com for full episodes. The audio version contains 3 full-length reviews per week, topical news segments, and listener feedback. Great for long commutes, exercise, or surviving the impending apocalypse. Thanks to Chuck Linnington for the on-screen artwork. Email jfdpodcast@gmail.com or check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, or whatever else is going on. We're probably there and wanna hear from you. Until next time, keep washing them dishes.